Whoa!
Ooh, welcome back, everybody. We are finally ready to start our second playthrough in this Dark Souls 3 achievement guide. Remember to do so, you rest at the bonfire at Firelink Shrine and select to begin Journey 2. After watching the opening cutscene again, we are returned to the very beginning of the game in the Cemetery of Ash. We still have all of our items and equipment, and so now here's what I'm going to do. Because the only thing that's in New Game Plus is a few key items, well, more than a few, several, all of which are rings, upgraded versions of rings we already have, which are needed in order to get the achievement for collecting every ring in the game. There's also some key items that I'm going to highlight, such as Covenant items to make our farming easier at the end, and some key questline areas that will help because they will enable summons for some of the harder bosses at the end of the game. Other than that, it's just going to be a straight shot. And so, since we've already gone through the entire game, I'm going to fade in and out whenever a key area or item or location or event pops up in order to explain it to you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to mention. You will also notice that this game is much easier. If you thought New Game Plus was supposed to be harder because all the enemies have higher health and deal more damage, you would be wrong. Oh, one thing I do want to mention, yes. Since we don't need souls as much, I like to keep the covetous Silver Serpent ring on for the entire first playthrough, but when we get to playthroughs 2 and 3, I like to switch it to the gold one. Because some foes drop Covenant items, so we can go ahead and start hopefully getting lucky with those. So I like to switch to that. Another option would be the Fire Clutch Ring or the Dark Clutch Ring, depending on who you are trying to fight. Alright, with all of that said, we're going to just rush through and I will return for our first New Game Plus item. So for our first new item, we need to go back to where the Crystal Lizard was in the Cemetery of Ash. And you'll see right here is the speckled stone plate ring. Feel free to kill the Crystal Lizard if you want. So I have just arrived at Firelink Shrine again, and I want to mention something that we are still going to attempt every area and every boss in this playthrough, even the optional ones. And we're going to use/sell any of the boss souls still, save for 2. And I'll mention what those are at the appropriate times. Other than that, though, we're basically going to beeline to each boss in the same order that we handled them in the first playthrough, save for a couple of detours for the previously mentioned rings, covenant items, etc. Once you get to this area where the hollow that transforms into the Pus of Man was, and the Crystal Lizard is over here, which you can take care of if you want. Might as well get this item. Notice all the souls have changed too. You have to make a little complicated jump over to this roof by jumping over the corner there. Luckily, you can run up this area, that little step up. So position yourself and leap as best you can. If you're struggling, then disrobe so that you can increase your jump distance, because if you miss, you'll fall down onto that awning, and then you gotta climb back up. You might want to heal up, and you might want to equip your Silver Cat ring before you try it. If you do make it, however, you are rewarded with a Flesh Bite ring +1. One thing I need to mention is that you do lose all your key items in New Game Plus, so you do have to do some things like heading to Emma to get the small Banner of Lothric. before fighting Vort. Otherwise, you won't be able to proceed. Also, I like to try to activate all the bonfires again, and open up any shortcuts you might be able to think of, just in case you need to do any kind of backtracking. And on top of all that, I also like to use at least one summon sign if I can, or any bosses, just because it makes things a little bit easier. Make sure you talk with Yol again, and teleport him back to Firelink Shrine. The reason for doing that is twofold. One, you can always get 5 free levels from him. And 2, we're actually going to accomplish the, whatever it's called, the Usurpation of Fire ending again, without actually triggering it at the very end. That way we'll have a summons for the last boss fight, which is very helpful. Make sure you talk to Yol and Firelink as soon as you can to draw out your true strength 5 times. The good news is, you don't have to kill yourself twice in between each drawing out. Since you already have, or you should already have, maximum hollowing.
Then shall we be bearer?
You can just continuously do this, and you should be going for 40 intelligence and 40 faith, and then after that you should be going for 30 vigor and 30 endurance.
Then shall we be bearer?
Make sure you get the,
Be safe.
I don't know what to call it. Trigger word, I guess. That he's ready to move on. And then you want to quit your game and reload. And you come back to find him has passed on. Find he has passed on. Make sure that you also talk to Yuria so that you get this quest started.
Allow another matter to bear.
Come back to the dilapidated bridge bonfire in the undead settlements. Take out this saw blade hollow. And if you are not embered up, then do so. And take on Holy Knight Hodrick. For he drops a vertebrae shackle, which will reduce our farming time at the end. And another thing of note is that since you should still have young white branches from the previous playthrough, you can now go straight into this area without getting rained on by arrows. Which we're going to want to do because in here is a new item. Over here were the Mortician's Ashes. But very close nearby, there it is. By the well, next to the little shack, is the Poison Bite Ring +1. You can feel free to buy the Grave Key from the Shrine Handmaid again, since you should have probably already got the ashes, since you had to get the ring from nearby anyway. I'm probably not going to bother to free Irina because we don't need her, and the only benefit it has now is getting us Egon for the Crystal Sage, which is a pretty easy fight already. However, you do want to start Sigurd's quest line and definitely fight the demon that's at the top of the tower. When you do get to Sigurd and the demon, make sure you talk to him, but make doubly sure in the window opposite of the one you exited from, you get a life ring +1.
that go?
Make sure you kill the curse-rotted Greatwood so that you get the transposing kiln. Otherwise, you won't be able to transpose boss souls with Bloodlith. You can also get some items down here if you want. Which, by the way, I sell any duplicate items I'm picking up. Make sure that you also at least talk to Henri and exhaust her dialogue. You're going to want to forward her quest line, because again, so you have a summons at the final boss, which is very useful. In the Road of Sacrifices swamp, I'm standing right where we fight the first giant crab, and on the top of this cliff right here is the bonfire. And if you face it and turn directly around, then there is a new ring. So this is the first boss soul you want to make sure you do not use. We're going to transpose that for a sorcery back at Firelink Shrine. And if you have not beaten the curse rotted Greatwood, you must do that so that you get the transposing kiln. The next time you travel back to Firelink after meeting Henri and Horace, Cirrus should show up. Make sure you talk to her and exhaust her dialogue, because you're gonna want to finish her quest line so that she can help Twin Princes fight. Then talk to Ludlith and begin transposition of Crystal Hail. Or you can get the Crystal Sage's Rapier. We are going to get both before we move on to the final phase of farming for Covenant items. Doesn't really matter which order you get them in. Make sure that when you go to the Cathedral of the Deep, beat the second giant here, that you loot the area, specifically this one, for a pale tongue. Make sure that you do the side area here in the Cathedral, where we take the shortcut accessible from the bottom floor, two giants are, and up this lift that eventually leads to the rafters. You technically don't have to do this, but it leads to a Covenant item. As stated previously, make sure you come up to the very top of the roof. Even though technically we can bypass this, but at the very end right here is an extra pale tongue, thus saving us time at the end.
The untidy mess.
If you do the Patches side quest, which you get by opening up the two bridges, pulling those two levers that are at the bottom floor here, and then when you go past the Deacons of the Deep area, you meet up with Patches in Sigward's armor, and then he drops the bridge on you, and then when you do the rafters part, he's right here, and if you say you know who I am, then you get a free rusted coin, which is helpful for when you're farming, because it increases your item discovery. And later on, it unlocks the potential to get a rusted gold coin. So, something that is not hard to do, and relatively on the way. Behind the altar, just before the Deacons of the Deep boss fight, there's a new ring. And don't forget to summon Henri and Horace to help you and further their quest. After killing the Deacons, the next time you come back to the Firelink Shrine, make sure you talk to Henri again, so that we again further her quest. And Horace while you're at it. From the Keep Ruins bonfire in Farron Keep, that's the one at the end of the bridge with the grooves. If you come around to the left side, if you're facing it from the bridge, there's a new ring. After you extinguish the third flame in Farron Keep, come down to the back of the island where the third flame was. And into the Basilisk area, if you come around to the right. If you keep continuing forward, eventually make sure you take care of the Basilisks, which I have already. Just keep going straight. And there, over by one of the trees, is a new ring. You can summon the Londor Paleshade to help with the Abyss Watchers, which also helps with Uria's questline, thus giving you a NPC to help with the final boss fight. When next you return to Firelink Shrine, make sure you don't forget to transpose the soul of a stray demon.
So,
You will have two options. You can either get the Boulder Heave, Havel's Ring. So whichever one you want the most, I'm not going to be using either of them, so it doesn't matter what order I get them in, but we need both to get all the achievements. So whichever one you get now, get the other one in the next playthrough. So now in the Catacombs of Karthus, when you get to the area just above the giant steps here, make sure you go down this corridor. And take care of these guys. And as you walk down the steps, we have Henri, so make sure you talk to her.
Oh, have you seen my shape? I've not been. Yes, I see.
And say no.
If you could, I will let you send me.
In the room with all the pots, some of which have dark black orbs, there is a new ring. Last thing to make sure you do in the catacombs is talk to Henri up here. And again, tell him or her that no, you have not seen Horus.
Oh, yeah, I've said. Oh.
Unfortunately, we still have to do all of the Smoldering Lake, and we have to get back to the Ballista all the way at the very end. Before we head that direction, make sure you take a little detour to kill Horus to further Henri's quest. Back at the ginormous Ballista in the Smoldering Lake, we're facing it from the direction that we originally came from. You come to the right here, you get a new ring. When you get back to Firelink Shrine after defeating the old Demon King, make sure you talk to Cirrus again to further her quest line.
Hello again. I have since.
And if you're following along, then you should be about to start the Irahil of the Boreal Valley. And I will point out where the important key items are for that area next time. Until then, stay safe.